Hey, welcome everyone to the Test Smarter, Not Harder first edition. Great to have you all here. For those that don't know, I'm Joe Colantonio, and I'm going to be the host of this session, this event. So we want to try to make this as interactive as possible, and two ways to do that. One is to chat. So if you're in the chat, I already see a bunch of people in the chat already. So hey, Marco, hey, Edgar, hey, Jake, good to see you. Pablo. So like I said, to make it as interactive as possible, hit that chat, say a message, tell me where you're all from. So we have Colombia here, we have Mexico, US, Colombia, North Carolina, awesome. Jose's from Kajika, cool, nice. I'm from Tennessee. So it looks like we have a great international crowd today. So that's going to be awesome. We're also going to have speakers. So there's a chance to ask questions for the speakers, and you'll see a session chat, I think, we can actually ask speakers. Chat is where we'll chat among ourselves, and the other way is where you would ask questions to the speaker. Hopefully that makes sense. Wahoo! Caesar. Brazil's here, Argentina, Peru, awesome. Seattle, Washington. Awesome. Thank you. Good to have you. All right. So like I said, I'll be looking at this chat and, like I said, I want to make it as interactive as possible, but I want to make sure I'm on time with everything. But as I said, it's great to have you all here for this session. And we're really going to cover a lot of things I think are really hot topics in the industry. I've had over 400 interviews with people in the test automation space. And lately I've been hearing a lot more about AI, machine learning, immersive technologies, NFTs, Web 3.0, all these types of things. And so I think this session, we're going to touch on a few of these things and where we see automation going in the future. So great to have you all here, and get your opinion in the chat would be awesome. So we'll be talking with a panel of experts about the role of testing in an immersive experience, and we'll dive into how automation visual testing helps develop high quality experiences, which I think is kind of lacking. And I think people are just trying to get on board now to see how we actually do this. So everyone here is an early adapter, I think, or early on the testing train for this. So I think you're all leaders. So it's exciting to have you all here. So I guess let's get into it and let's start. All right. Hey, great. Welcome to this session on, we were calling it the Discover Track. And I guess before we get into it, let me introduce Lucas, who is the product development lead from MagnifAI, and discover what MagnifAI is all about. I've been hearing more and more about it, so I'm excited to really dive into this. So Lucas, how are you?
Hey Joe, nice to have you on board on our first MagnifAI Test Smarter Not Harder event. We're very happy to have everybody here and create this space for the entire software development community and anybody out there looking for new testing strategies or for their product and their businesses, and keep their testing stack top notch.
Absolutely. Great. So I think before we go to the panelists and talk about some really high level topics that a lot of people are struggling with in this area, I think some people might be actually wondering what MagnifAI is. I know I recently heard about it, so I'm not sure how many people here are familiar with it. So how did it come about? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure, Joe. Well, our story begins in the quality engineering studio here at Globant, and the experience of our team regarding test automation's traditional limitations made us think that there had to be a way of improving and simplifying quality assurance in complex visual scenarios, right? So, Magnify here, we strive for game-changing solutions that unlock industry reinvention, and for successful innovation to happen, we need to identify these challenging scenarios. What are our users struggling with? How can we make their lives easier? And by having those questions answered, then we can refocus and design products, experience, processes that target these difficulties. And that's when value proposition occurs, right? It's real evident, and customer satisfaction occurs in no time.
Great. So how do you turn this need into something tangible? Because I know a lot of people may have heard about visual testing, but I think you're doing something slightly different with it.
Yeah, well, first of all, like I was saying, we took a deep dive into our testers' main pain points, right? And there are various aspects in regarding to this topic. because we have a whole variety of testers. We have from manual tester, from test automation engineers, and everybody has different needs. And from a manual perspective, we found out that our testers were doing a lot of error prone, repetitive, and time consuming tasks that took focus away from them for more strategic tasks. And from the test automation point, script maintenance has been a real hassle these days in traditional frameworks limitations. So this has been a corner for MagnifAI. This is a product that leverages on artificial intelligence to do the heavy lifting for us in these typical scenarios. So what we do is we enhance and simplify these visual testing processes that make sure that we get in production environment is what was originally intended and not something else. That's what visual testing is all about in a nutshell, right? So if you add that to the research that shows that a product's first impression is 94% related to visual aspects, well, we got to get it right the first time, right, Joe? So you know what they say, there's no second chance for first impressions. So from MagnifAI, we act as a brand reputation guardian that take care of every detail for a seamless user experience.
Absolutely. And I guess nowadays with all the different devices, everything things run on, you never know how something's visually going to look to an end user. So accessibility testing, all these things, I think visual validation is really a big help with. So that's today. But I'm looking at digital products that I see on the horizon that really constantly evolving. Do you think automated visual testing software will play a key role in the quality control industry as we go into more of an immersive type of technology space?
Well, it's already happening, Joe. I mean, this has been a key role in QA processes everywhere in the industry. I mean, we're talking about the digital interfaces are getting more and more complex, and as this complexity arises, so does our testing stack have to enhance, right? I mean, users are getting more and more high quality standards, and they're adopting these new interfaces. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any remakes of old video games that we used to play back in the day. I don't know. I remind of Age of Empires, Prince of Persia,
Yeah.
Mario, and we get remakes of those video games. And why is that? It's because of this. We're prioritizing new interface uh, for our users. And the other day, I was remember Back to the Future 2, the scene where Marty goes into the 80s cafes and they're playing this shooter game, and
Yep.
and Marty like nails it, and the kids that they're like, you gotta use your hands. It's like it's a baby's toy. Well, we're getting closer and closer than most people think, and we're entering the area of immersive experiences. I mean, virtual worlds, virtual spaces, NFTs are they're already here, and users are adopting these interfaces. And we need to align and create a smarter QA process for these new type of interfaces. Let's face it, we don't test like we used to, right? I mean, visual automation is a game changer, and you don't want to be left behind in that topic. Because I remember when we arrived at the pandemic, a lot of industries that were already transforming through the digital transformation had a very huge advantage to those that reacted to the pandemic. So this is the same scenario. We need to be early adopters like you were mentioning, and for that to be able to happen, we need to create new test strategies. And when we create new test strategies, of course we have challenges, we have constant exploration. I mean, there's no single cookie cutter approach for every type of interface, and we're going to get in the deep dive into that. And it's a process we go here every day at Globant. So this is what we want to share with you guys today.
Absolutely. So you said it is a process, especially some of these things. People may be newer to these technologies. Do you recommend they start small, or like you mentioned, some video games? A lot of people don't realize you can use visual testing to actually automate a lot of these things. So do you see starting small as being a way people can just start dipping their toes in the water and getting more familiar with it before it really starts becoming something that people are going to have to know for their jobs?
Well, you know what they say, it's all about baby steps sometimes,
Yes.
right? Because if you want to tackle a huge workload, you might get, I don't know, discouraged or seem like something impossible to accomplish. So yeah, you could go start small with something more that doesn't look that far off, because sometimes when we talk about this, and we're gonna get it in detail with our panelists right now, about that, it seems like, oh, well, you're talking about something very futuristic, and maybe it's not that futuristic, and we can apply the same concepts to more um, typical scenarios, as you may call it, in everyday life, right?
Absolutely. And we have some Age of Empire fans here. Jake in the chat said, I just got the new
Nice.
edition of Age of Empires. That's awesome.
Nice.
Cool. Great. So thank you, Lucas. As you said, technology is evolving at a breakneck speed, especially with continuous integration, continuous testing. Everything's getting faster and faster. And the QA industry, as always, we really need to try to keep pace with it, but also ensure quality. So MagnifAI, I love that being seen as a guardian of brand reputation. That's so true. It's so critical that your applications work, especially in a software-first world now. If something goes wrong, we have like software running hospitals things and hospitals and like nuclear plants, like all these mission critical things. So it's not just insignificant. Like we really are guardians of brand reputation and everything. So I love that. Also, quality engineering must be prepared. So I think you brought up some key points of how people can get started. So today, really to take care of visual details through automation visual testing to improve and simplify quality assurance processes. What challenges do we all see in the future? So that's what this next panel is going to be all about. So that's why I'm really excited about it. So thanks again, Lucas. And let's see in the next Learn track, how we can tackle some of these things.
Awesome, Joe.
Thanks again. All right, great. Our panel is here and really excited to have this discussion. So before we get into it, let me introduce our panel of experts. We have Leonardo, who is the Quality Engineering Technical Director at MagnifAI. We have Camren, who's the Tech Director of Metaverse Studios, which I think is wicked cool. So I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of questions there. And we also have Tomás, who is the Quality Engineering Technical Director at Globant Gaming Projects. Once again, really cool area. So hey, welcome experts.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Good to have you.
Happy to be here with you, Joe, and all these amazing people.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Everyone's audio is working, so that's great. So let's start with the very first question. So how do you think testing paradigms have been changing with the new technologies that we talked about with Lucas, and how are professionals or professions, people in this industry really preparing to deal with these changes?
Okay, I can take that one. Well, you just mentioned, yes, quality and testing needs to be at front of these new technologies, and the professionals and quality needs to evolve as well. Yes, how can we validate this new technology or this new paradigm or this new environment? How can we make this product trustable or quality for the final users or the clients? Yes, I see some time ago that it was very common to see testers, quality analysts focus only on one part of the solution, only on front end, so they only test the UI, only focus on the back end, so they only check the databases and the services, as some of your podcast or your other guests that you have to talk about performance or to talk about mobile. And we have before different tracks, different paths and profiles, but nowadays, I think that everything is more hybrid. Yes, you need to know and understand a bit of all the aspects that your product is going to be tackled, because the components and the parts of the system are all tangled right now. Yes, and you need to understand that to work within the team. Yes, to work within the product that will be updated continuously. Yes, and now on this digital world. And I think that the ages and the era of release a product, a package, and leave it there does not exist anymore. Yes, right now, and it's more common frequently that everything once launched receives continuous support, is updated every day or every week for years. There are new features merged with other tools on the company that you have, so you need to be on that update as well. And as as time passes, and as you talked with Lucas before, needs to be time reducing. Yes, and also on these hybrid profiles has been appearing several tools with codeless automation that support people to automate their test. Yes, to not need to maintain the scripts or the code continuously as the product grows and grows, and also are several products that helps companies to create an application or a website with a few clicks and to have it live, yes, worldwide live. And that's pretty much the focus, yes, on how can we reduce time on doing the manual effort on this exhausting task and repetitive tasks that repetition after repetition can have more human error, yes, and or those tasks that needs to be leveraged into identify if we are comparing or seeing the same things, and how can we compare that if our own eyes are exhausted or tired after maybe days or hours on doing and checking the same stuff, and time being like the most valuable resource that we have. Yeah, so I think that the new paradigms bring these better, innovative, and time-reducing solutions when we are able to connect. I don't know, Leo, what do you think on this?
Yes, of course. Yes, totally aligned with what Tomás mentioned. I think with the eruption of these kind of new technologies, the software development and of course testing as a part of it, we need to redefine the testing strategies to the new paradigm based on immersive realities and artificial intelligence. Applications based on some kind of artificial intelligence force us to change the approach we do testing, right? I think that we need to change from a deterministic approach to something more probabilistic, right? We have a lot of metrics, a lot of behaviors to validate. When we test artificial intelligence or virtual realities, it's not just a test case that pass or fail. We have a lot of things to validate there. That's the reason why I think that the classic approach of predefined use cases, test cases with expected result, I think that no longer applies when we test artificial intelligence or immersive realities. What I'm trying to say that is not longer black and white, right? What we test is the ability of an artificial intelligence model to learn, and how this model, this computer vision implementation represent the reality in this new reality in the more realistic way. Today, practically all of us interact with some kind of artificial intelligence all the time, from voice assistants to image classifiers, playlist recommendations. This is really challenging for us. We need to redefine our testing strategies. We need to redefine our testing process. And we are lucky because we have a lot of new technologies based on artificial intelligence to reinvent us. Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Great insight. So, this just popped in my head. Of course, these technical changes have an impact on pretty much our entire reality, and our way of consuming, shopping, and interacting with the world is changing day by day. Being older, I remember when the internet just came out, and people were like, "Oh, everything's going to change," and brands just ignored it. They ignored it. They said, "Oh, nothing's going to happen." And then the internet really took off, and a lot of brands were caught off guard. I think a lot of people hear machine learning, AI, immersive technology, but kind of at the stage now where they're like, this isn't going to affect me. So I guess how can brands keep up with the times and not get caught up in the past and give users what they want without losing their identity or putting basically their reputation at risk?
Yeah, well, you just mentioned identity, and that was all of this about, yeah? To share and bring the experience to our customers, to our users, so they can have the values and the identity we as company or we as brands want to share with them, yeah? Years ago, long years ago, the company cares about how to generate ads or publicity or to share their impressions on newspaper, on the street, with the physical world. Then was more expanded with radio, then even more worldwide with television, then even more globalized with internet, mobile, and more with all the different places we can share our experience, our brand, our identity. So now we are talking about brand identity on a transmedia level. Yes, and that takes a lot. And transmedia, very shortly, is the storytelling the companies or brands uses to share those experiences across multiple platforms and formats, digital, physical, all of them, hybrid mixtures. So everything goes with a good image. Yes. Well, Lucas before shared that there is no second chances for a first impression. And also we hear a lot that an image worth even more than words. Yeah. So you can talk to whoever, but image impacts on today's world is huge. And more on this social media world that you have seconds to get your audience. Now, tab and you lost them. So the image and the perception of them is what is important here. Yes, to capture them on their first image. So we can go to the grocery store, we can go to a shop on their online site to receive the order via website. We can use WhatsApp or other application or other bots that they create to order, and we receive everything there. There are shops that have a virtual reality of their places, so you as customer visit them from your home, or having augmented reality features, so you can order and you can see the product on your phone. And all those aspects needs to have the brand identity, their colors, the values they want to transmit. And we want the experience of our customers to be the same in all the aspects. Doesn't matter if they go to the shop, if they visit the website, if they use the mobile application, if they are on the VR, virtual reality part of the brand. And this is not only for companies or for grocery or for other, but all the industries are here. Same happened with sports that share the experience not only when you go to see the match or a Grand Prix or whatever sport you're watching, also they share the social media with the fans, with the drivers or the professionals that plays that match, and also on video games. Yes, there are companies like FIFA, NBA, NHL, Formula One, that is a sport, has the website, has TV channel, has documentary. There are on the streaming platforms as well. It has magazine series that went instantly viral, and also they are part of video games too. So how can we share and bring that experience that our fans or the customers wants to have on the, for example, on the match, to have it on the video game as well? So I think the idea is to maintain that identity and to bring it place to place. It doesn't matter if it is physically or virtually or whatever.
Absolutely. Great. I'm just looking at the chat. George says, totally agree. New technologies boost new testing profiles and expertise. So I know, Thomas, you touched on a bunch of that. So George, I definitely agree as well. One of those areas, we already touched on it earlier, was gaming. We were kind of joking around, but I know that the gaming industry is basically one of the fastest growing industries. Animation, components, and design are really becoming, from when I started, more and more sophisticated. Before, I used to just be like two things going boop, boop, but now it's like, it's crazy, right? So, it's more immersive and consumers are getting more and more demanding. So what are some of the challenges of quality engineering in these complex visual scenarios? Because I'm not sure a lot of people know you can actually do a lot of automation nowadays with with some of these complex gaming kind of situations.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, the games before were kind of a couple of pixels, something moved from one side to the screen to the other. And as gaming and as the war, the challenges are getting even bigger. The contexts are even bigger because the games are changing every day. It doesn't matter if it's in 2-dimension, 3-dimension, virtual reality games. The experience the games wants to share with the gamers, with the users, are more complex. The mechanics, the features, and the world they want to create and share is huge. And there are different aspects that needs to be validated on the video games, assets that needs to be reviewed to validate the experience, the game producers and the studio or the developers and the company wants to generate on that game. Yeah. And also connected to what I shared before, there are brand identifications or companies that put publicity on games as well. And all that needs to be tested, needs to be validated. Imagine that you need to start a match, validate the logos or the names that appears somewhere. Then you need to quit the match, select another arena, validate the logos or names that appears again, and repeat that process over and over again to successfully validate everything is in their place. And maybe you can validate the name or the logo, but maybe that's not pixel perfect, or maybe the palette of the color changed a bit and you didn't realize it. Yes. So, and same with components and materials the game will have, trees, character, houses, whatever you want to have to be validated. And there are some games that each map, each session, each round the player has are randomly generated. Everything changes randomly between one match to the other. So how are you going to validate that everything was successfully loaded, that everything appears on the place that needs to appear? Yes. And back again to the user experience. And for example, as I mentioned on sports games that brings real life aspect to the game, you need to validate the companies, the names, the logos. There are teams that has their color, their logo, their players or their drivers or their whatever they have in their squad, and that needs to be validated because you want to maintain that experience to be as real as possible. Yes, if you have a squad that represents a team that exists in the physical world, but on the game the colors are different, the logo are not updated, the name on the squad is different, so you are not having the same experience that you want to provide to the users.
Love it. A lot of great info there. Once again, I'm looking at the chat. Lorenzo says you can even test how a personal object looks on your body, either statically or in movement. So these are some of those immersive experiences we're seeing more of. Lorenzo, I need to get you on my podcast because that sounds awesome, cool. Another cool person is Cam. And like I said, I want to get Cam involved here. So Cam, as you know, as digital environments are increasingly present in our daily lives, as the chat just pointed out, content generation is no longer just done by one person. It's usually a lot of users are beginning to really play a leading role in these spaces, contributing themselves. So how does user-generated content really influence the user experience and the performance of a digital application or product?
So thanks. I think that when you look at user-generated content as it is now and as it's been over the past 10 years or so, it's been mostly constrained. We've got text, with social media. You've got tweeting, which is just text, and then you have photos, and now we're seeing video through TikTok growing, YouTube as well. So these are kind of contained formats that platform testers have to test around. Okay, so we know we have text, and text can only do certain things, and we know we have video and audio, and they can only do certain things. User-generated content, especially as we're talking about gaming and metaverse immersive experiences, we start to see it opening up to be 3D models, to be animations, to be script that's executed on the platform on clients' versions of those games. And so these creations bring a whole new world of testing around, what's going to cause frame drops if we're talking about a 3D virtual experience. What's going to cause the user to have a smooth, buttery feel in their 60 frames per second and drop them down because a model is too complicated or a shader is too complicated. What user experience issues are going to happen because of this? Are we allowing content creators to execute malicious code? What are we exposing on accident as developers that testers need to be looking out for? And what's going to crash the application? So we're looking at a whole new set of content that's coming in through these through metaverse platforms and gaming platforms that testers need to know how to create, and they need to know what's going to break the worlds that they're creating for. And on top of that, there's the unboundness of AI with tools like Daly and Midjourney coming, where you can kind of type in a phrase and it can generate content, as you sleep endlessly. There's a kind of an arms race right now for the content that can be coming into a platform and how quickly we can test sort of its impact on these platforms. And so I think that UGC has a huge impact, especially for testers, because there's no longer clear bounds. And maybe to what Leo was saying earlier, at some point you have to test sort of the fuzziness of some of this content that's coming into the platforms.
No, absolutely. It's no longer deterministic where everything's in our control. When it's in production now and users is trying to contribute, you have to test for the unknown of the unknown. So it's kind of crazy. I love your term buttery feel. I'm going to use that in a sentence, hopefully. So talking about buttery feel, how about immersive experiences are becoming more and more popular? We have to mention the metaverse, obviously. So what do you think the metaverse, how is it going to impact our industry as well?
Well, I don't think we have enough time to fully go into every aspect of the metaverse because it captures a lot of these evolving trends. But if I had to pick one that kind of represents a shift that we're going to have to get used to, I would say augmented and virtual reality. Because if you look at you were talking about the early days of the internet, you're talking about personal computers, that sort of, it set a paradigm for how we interact, how we digitize experiences. And when you look at email digitized traditional letter sending. We had to get used to that. If you're talking about keyboard and mouse, we had to adapt as users to how that, how we get access to the performance gains of digital technology. We had to adapt. With the smartphone, we got some of our human nature back a little bit. We were able to interact with software with our fingers, with more natural scrolling. And we could carry it around in our pocket, still interfacing with the 2D world. But with augmented reality and virtual reality, we're talking about a brand new interaction model in the same way smartphones brought touch. Now we have things like fingers and hands, full fingers and hands, that we have to think about how we interact with the virtual world. We're able to grab and push and pull in these spaces. We can wave to other people. And what does that mean when you're waving in a spatial experience? But not only do we have a new interaction model with AR and VR, but now we have our interface is 3D. So we're no longer constrained to a 2D plane like we were before. Now we are in a 3D space. And so I think for testers, we're going to take a lot from game testing, because that's sort of set the foundation of how you test 3D experiences. But I think the reality is testers need to be wearing VR headsets. They need to become early metaverse citizens in some of these spaces to really understand what are the interaction mechanisms that exist, what are the points that they break of these new technologies and these new immersive experiences.
Yes, totally. And in line to what Cam is mentioning, the technologies we use in real life scenarios, for example, I don't know, face recognition, when we're in face masks during the pandemic, the surveillance of people walking in maybe a restricted area to assist the security protocols, or maybe the car license plate monitoring system can also be applied for other scenarios and assessments, such as virtual reality applications, games that become every day more realistic, or maybe the metaverse too. So we have the advantage that we learn a lot from the real life scenarios and how we can apply artificial intelligence in order to provide an augmented vision or more information in regards of real scenarios, and use the same technologies and the same approaches to the field of testing. So I think that it's really interesting to see how these patterns turn to repeat itself across all the software industry, and of course as a part of this new paradigm shift.
For sure. Once again, I'm just looking at the chat. Marco had a cool user case. He actually does a lot of testing for NFTs to be used for creating experiences within their metaverse. And he says it's more so important now when they're working with brands. So I just want to tie it into what Thomas was saying as well, and what you've all touched on, how digital identity and brand really ensuring brand security is really critical nowadays as well. But besides that, I'm just curious to get your opinion on how close are we really to applying concepts that, have already been applied in the real world to the testing industry? Like, how can you leverage, say, artificial intelligence models trained to detect objects, say, in the real world for development, and then testing in an immersive type of reality?
Great question. Oh, yes, as we mentioned, there is a great potential in all the technologies that we have been implemented so far in the everyday life. And at MagnifAI, we are working to leverage all this previous research into the field of the application development and testing. So let me show you a real example of
Cool.
what I'm talking about. Okay, let's from the start. Okay, excellent. Well, this is maybe a really basic example. We are using this in this example a video as an input, but maybe it could be any source like streaming or any other kind of input. Here it's really simple. So here you can see a tour in a first person. Maybe at a first glance it doesn't show too much, but we can see how different objects are presented on the screen. So in this example, we are, as we mentioned before, we are seeing a real life video. But suppose there is a game, right? So in this example, this is not new to say that through the object recognition or classification technologies, we can obtain information about what we see on the screen. But the most interesting thing is to see how these images can be processed and the information we can obtain for these images, right? So maybe you will have seen these examples hundreds of times. It's not rocket science, so we are applying object identification, object recognition, and object detection. But as we mentioned before, all of these technologies we learn from the real life can also be applied in the world of testing. Because when we test in this example, the GTA, right? So games, for example, they are becoming more realistic. Therefore, we'll be able to obtain information for them in the same way that we do in the real life scenarios. Here we see some examples of realistic games where the same image recognition techniques. We can obtain the position, the color, we can validate different assets, we can obtain a lot of information for using object recognition. And then we can process the information. This is the most interesting part, right? This information can be stored and processed. We can obtain descriptions of the scenarios. We have different models that provide information about what we are seeing, like image captioning, for example. We can obtain colors, we can obtain assets, we can see the relative position of the elements, we can see how many elements are we seeing on the screen, and we can use artificial intelligence in order to do that. If we are all of this kind of metadata into an image using machine learning models, then we can insert this data into a database, and we can perform something that is really useful to perform, I don't know, maybe SQL queries to an image. Suppose that you are a tester, that you are testing, I don't know, a game, and you need to validate the position of a specific asset, or you need to validate the color of the coordinates. So machine learning models provides us the ability to interpret the image, add metadata, and then store that data into a database. In this example, we are doing that, and then we can query the image and obtain information. So this is just one example about how we can do that, how we can transform images in this example into really valuable data. This is just one of an example of what we can do using machine learning models. What we want to show is that the same process that we apply in the real life, we can apply the same on testing strategies and software development.
Very nice.
And also, let me show you how these same concepts are being applied on the design of MagnifAI, right? So the same strategy is based on computer vision. In this example, again, this is not rocket science, but suppose that you need to validate the color of the card, right? You have a specific input, right? Maybe an asset provided by the design team, and also you have what you obtain from the real implementation, suppose a production environment. You can use computer vision in order to see the difference that we found between the expected result and the actual result. We can set up thresholds. You can say, okay, I'm expecting a 100% of similarity. Maybe you can say, okay, but I can test this visually. Okay, you can do that with one image, 2 images, but suppose that you are a tester that you need to test thousands of images on different environments, on different platforms, every day, perform a regression with, I don't know, thousands of test cases. So the scenario changes. So this is an example of how we can apply the same principles of the artificial intelligence, and this example, computer vision, to validate assets on the real life, on the real scenario. This is a real example, right? And also, one thing that is important is that we can identify these elements without the need to interact with the code of the application, but we are going to talk about this later.
Very cool. And I love how that's a real world example. So you actually implemented it in the real world. And so this isn't just theory, you actually are doing it now. So I love that.
Cool.
So
Thanks.
awesome stuff. So thank you, Leo, for sharing these examples. And I think a lot of valuable insights. I have some ideas now of companies I could probably spin off with AI, especially in sports. But I won't get into that there because they just came to me. But anyway, we have a lot of questions coming our way. So I thought maybe we jump in and see what people are really want to know more about. But Lucas, I wanted to hand it off to you as well. Say hello.
Hey, Joel. Good to be back.
Yep. Good,
Thanks.
Good. Yeah. Cool. So let's get to some questions. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. So I thought I'd start with one of the questions that kind of ties in. It says, does MagnifAI support computer vision testing? And I think you show this of media streaming domains based applications.
Totally. We're working with the whole aspect of video streaming and gaming, like Leo showed. And we're tackling all these new scenarios. I mean, we're evolving. What Leo just displays the evolution of where MagnifAI wants to head right now. But it's really interesting, the scenarios that we're covering today with real big corporations in very complex scenarios to validate, because sometimes, like Leo mentioned, there's two things to the side of the coin. Like, you have on the scale part, and you say, okay, if we're going to compare images, you got to take it and think everything when visual testing is about, you got to take it to scale scenarios, complex flows, because sometimes within your workflow you have a very complex use case that you can traditionally tackle with traditional framework automation strategies, but when it comes to visual testing, maybe you're leaving some of that out. So that's one thing to say, that the coverage you're going to get through visual validations, and the other is the precision, because sometimes even the most keenest eye is going to miss some detail, right? We have some use cases that we got the images, and when we looked at them, says, I see they're the same. They're basically the same, and they're not. When you look at it through the power of AI, through computer vision, you realize that there are very important differences that could have slipped into production.
Absolutely. Great answer. So Leo, you did mention a lot of scenarios, but what industries do you think maybe MagnifAI AI is a must-have, or technology like this is a must-have?
Yeah, actually, MagnifAI is a tool specifically designed to test application with a strong visual component, right? No matter what kind of industries, if you need to validate a graphic user interface, MagnifAI will do the magic. But to mention some examples, we put focus on gaming, because traditionally gaming applications are difficult to test, because it's difficult to interact visually with the elements on the screen. So we consider that MagnifAI can provide a very huge help in this task. Streaming applications, e-learning, and so on, not only for web-based, but also for any kind of platforms, mobile, consoles. There is no limitation. The sky is the limit.
Nice. So another question someone brought up is, I believe, as you mentioned, that MagnifAI can reduce maintenance time. I believe this was you, Lucas. Can you explain how this can be achieved?
Yeah, totally. Well, when we talk about automation, basically, to sum it up, we're talking about objects that we have in our application and validations that we want to produce on those objects. And well, to produce those validations, we must first recognize them, tackle them, see where are they, and then afterwards we can perform the validations. But even though today we have various ways of finding those objects within our applications, via, I don't know, XPath, class ID, class name, whatever. What happens when that reference changes because our design changed? That happens all the time. And before you say self-healing, we have another engagement to tackle that issue, and that's through computer vision. We can have another way to target those objects without having to address a particular reference, because we know that's going to fail. We know that that's going to break your script in the long run. So what we do is we use your input, that what is it that you're trying to find, the particular object, as a parameter, and that won't change unless you start to look for something else, and that's a whole other use case. But if you're always looking for the same components, you don't have to rely on a reference point that changes over time. I mean, we have applications out there that have dynamic IDs on purpose for security reasons. So how do you tackle that automation part? So with this approach, what we do is we shift the focus. We don't rely on the DOM to produce those validations, rely on computer vision to find those objects for me and produce the assertions on those particular objects as we need them.
Absolutely. I've been doing automation for over 20 years, and the two biggest hindrances were wait times, people messing up wait times, and IDs changing to make tests flaky. Using a visual approach, I think, solves both of these. That was a great example. I don't know if anyone else had any other examples, or I can go to the next question. If not,
no, we can mention also, sorry to interrupt, but it's important to say about the wait when we need to wait for some element to be displayed on the screen. It's interesting because MagnifAI can deal with this, because MagnifAI works on an API architecture, so you can collect all your assets once you have the input images and the expected results. So you can do this kind of validations offline, so you don't need to deal with explicit, implicit wait. I don't want to mention threaded sleep because it's not a good practice. But yes, I think that it's really important what you talk about, Joe, that is the wait times, and this is a hardest thing to deal with it.
And in line to what we were mentioning before about how applications complexity tends to rise and evolve through the technology, we have scenarios where we use computer vision also to detect these objects, as I was mentioning, that you cannot detect via traditional automation tools. There are components out there in the industry that are so brand new that if you hit the inspect button, you're not going to be able to find it through the DOM. So that's another use case that we have for MagnifAI, to see what the DOM can't see sometimes, right? Because everything starts to evolve so rapidly, and we need to stay on our top game, because otherwise we're going to be performing a bad user experience. And it takes a whole lot of time to build a good reputation, but you can wreck it in a matter of seconds. So that's very important to say as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I used to work on a radiology application that did x-rays, and even if you did it manually, you would miss things. But using visual validation, you'd be able to pick things up that as a manual test, no matter how much time you had, it wouldn't work for you. But another interesting point I think you bring up is almost like with some of these solutions out there, it's almost like you're testing code, you're creating loops and everything to try to understand what IDs are being generated dynamically, rather than actually testing like an end user. So it's almost like using a visual approach. It's as if you're a real user, because you're actually using the visual cues that a real user would see. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think it's more of a realistic type of test when you use a visual type of a test.
Yeah, totally. And what we like to do at MagnifAI also is to expand, and we like to say democratize testing, right? Because you don't have to have any technical skills to produce these validations. So we have a user interface, and we can produce these same validations and extrapolate those scenarios that maybe as of today rely on technical skills and that type
Yeah.
of knowledge, and we need people from user experience, we need web UIs, we need product owners and managers to be able to produce those validations, because sometimes when we find the errors, it's too late. So we need to tackle those things, those issues beforehand, pre-production, and to avoid these painful errors that slip into production and can, like I mentioned before, affect brand quality.
Absolutely. So Cam, I'm just curious to know, a lot of people say, how can I get started? How can I get started? So if someone wants to start testing virtual worlds, you have any actual piece of advice that they could put into place maybe to get started?
I mean, I think that, this might be hard for some people, but I think playing games might be good for some folks who want to get into it. I think really understanding what are the interaction models in these virtual worlds. As far as like user generated content, there's simplified modeling tools now, especially in VR. You can't see behind me, but I have VR headsets hung up on the wall. But now, content's able to be created in VR, so you can, start building models and getting an idea of like what's a model made out of. I think that a lot of it is coming from gaming, especially right now. We're talking about 3D worlds built on top of gaming. So I think play games, understand interaction model, think about how you might break them, understand the data behind these 3D worlds, and I think that'll get you most of the way there to being able to break them.
Nice. Someone in the chat's actually using contact lenses to perceive VR or AR experiences and devices. I wouldn't even know how to start testing that, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I know we mentioned a lot about the UI. Just to, I know you did touch on this, but just so everyone knows, MagnifAI focuses only on UI or UX as well. I think Leo, you did mention UX, but anyone, I guess, does it support both?
Actually, we have some features in which MagnifAI can definitely contribute. That is visual testing, compare images, compare different informations, and send the results in a way that you can integrate MagnifAI as a part of any test automation framework. But also we have some testing types, like maybe accessibility testing or UX or user experience, whatever, that maybe MagnifAI is not the tool that will solve all these challenges, but also can collaborate with this, right? We just put the focus on the visual experience, as you say, test the application like the final users do, but of course we can collaborate on other aspects of the testing, like user experience and other type of non-functional testing, right?
Great. I'm not sure, but I'll ask it. It's in the questions. Miguel wants to know, how can you apply this technology to the environment? Example in terms of climate change. I don't know. I guess you could apply AI models to this and somehow test your assumptions.
Yes. Actually, yes, we were proud if we can apply MagnifAI to identify these kind of things. But today we put the focus on the different industries that we mentioned before. But we have a lot of machine learning algorithms and a lot of AI, big data approach to work on the different interpretations of the climate change. Maybe in the future, MagnifAI can help with that, but today we have a lot of already done implementation for doing that, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Great, absolutely. George in the comments said, what is the tester profile that could perform this kind of test? AI, Metaverse, etc. Just only video game experiences, or a QC analyst could do this as well? I don't know. Does anyone have any opinions on what type of skills people should be boning up on for this new type of world for testing? Cam?
I mean, I think it's very similar. Like when we had smartphones, no one was asking I guess people were like, how do we test smartphones? There's a new interaction model. It's about using it. So I think a QC analyst can strap on a VR headset and go hang out in any of those VR experiences, or like I said earlier, play games. It's there's some part of just sort of testing this as a human, because especially AR and VR is a much more of a human interface. So it's like, how do I interact with the world, and where does it break? I think the data behind that, if you start talking about automation, QC will have to learn a little bit about the data structures of 3D models and those kinds of things to really be able to tear them apart and find out what's going to break the systems.
Absolutely. And Leo, I interrupted you. Were you about to say something as well?
No, I was about to say what Cam said. So thank you.
Perfect.
Something similar.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. Thanks again for putting this all together and for sharing your expertise with us today. I think it's really critical, and I think it's a topic we needed to talk more about. So big round of applause for our experts. And yeah, hopefully we'll cover some more in future events, because I think it's a much needed topic. So remember, though, before we leave, you're going to actually receive an email, which you can actually request a free trial for MagnifAI. I've seen a few people in the chat ask, how does this work? How do I get started? This is a great opportunity for you. So if you registered, you're going to get an email, and I would jump on this chance, because I really believe it's the future. And actually seeing a tool technology in action can actually let you know what it can do and what it can't do. So definitely take advantage of that. And what's even cool is you get a chance to get an NFT. How are you going to do that? Well, you can scan a QR code when the event is finished for your NFT. So the event will finish, you'll see a QR code, scan it, and you get your very own NFT. And once again, experts, awesome stuff. So thank you so much. And thank you, MagnifAI, for putting this together. Really appreciate it. And as always, test everything to keep the good. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.